From now on, I'm quoting an open letter from God.
If I were the devil, if I were the prince of darkness, I'd want to engulf the whole world in darkness, and I'd have a third of its real estate and 4/5 of its population, but I wouldn't be happy until I had seized the ripest apple on the tree, thee. So I'd set about, however necessary, to take over the United States. I'd subvert the churches first. I'd begin with a campaign of whispers. With the wisdom of a serpent, I would whisper to you as I whispered to Eve, do as you please. To the young, I would whisper that the Bible is a myth. I would convince them that man created God instead of the other way around. I would confide that what's bad is good and what's good is square. And the old I would teach to pray after me, Our Father, which art in Washington. And then I'd get organized. I'd educate authors in how to make lurid literature exciting so that anything else would appear dull and uninteresting. I'd threaten TV with dirtier movies and vice versa. I'd peddle narcotics to whom I could. I'd sell alcohol to ladies and gentlemen of distinction. I'd tranquilize the rest with pills. If I were the devil, I'd soon have families at war with themselves, churches at war with themselves, and nations at war with themselves, until each in its turn was consumed. And with promises of higher ratings, I'd have mesmerizing media fanning the flames. If I were the devil, I would encourage schools to refine young intellects, but neglect to discipline emotions. Just let those run wild. Until before you knew it, you'd have to have drug-sniffing dogs and metal detectors at every schoolhouse door. Within a decade, I'd have prisons overflowing. I'd have judges promoting pornography. Soon I could evict God from the courthouse, then from the schoolhouse, and then from the houses of Congress. And in his own churches, I would substitute psychology for religion and deify science. I would lure priests and pastors into misusing boys and girls and church money. If I were the devil, I'd make the symbol of Easter an egg and the symbol of Christmas a bottle. If I were the devil, I'd take from those who have and give to those who wanted until I had killed the incentive of the ambitious. And what'll you bet? I couldn't get whole states to promote gambling as the way to get rich. I would caution against extremes in hard work, in patriotism, in moral conduct. I would convince the young that marriage is old-fashioned, that swinging is more fun, that what you see on TV is the way to be. And thus I could undress you in public, and I could lure you into bed with diseases for which there is no cure. In other words, if I were the devil, I'd just keep right on doing what he's doing.
Where does any synthetic molecule serve the living?
They don't.
Right.
I mean, none.
And am I right in suggesting that a medicine, by definition, is something which contains synthetic molecules, something that is registered, patented, and put into the market as a medicine?
Absolutely.
Proper. Right. So what I'm learning from you, Dr. Young, is that a quadrillion-dollar enterprise is at work amongst us, decimating, culling the human family.
Intentionally.
Intentionally, using synthetic molecules, which by design are cancer, AIDS, all of the bogeymen we could dream up.
Yeah, it's for the purpose of sterilization and population control. There's too many people on the planet we need to get rid of. In the words of Bill Gates, at least 3 billion people need to die. So we'll just start off in Africa. We'll start doing our research there, and we'll eliminate most of the Africans because they're deplorable. They're worthless. They're not part of this world economy. So they have their rights taken away, and they're suppressed, and they're experimented.
And the multilateral agencies and the health and regulatory, so-called, authorities and agencies appear in the main to have become weaponized and appear, I again use the word appear advisedly, we're not casting judgments here, we're taking depositions, listening to expert testimonies, appear to be weaponized and appear to be working in collusion against the living men and women of the soil. Is that a fair statement?
It is. It's not a bacterial war. It's a systemic poisoning war.
In 1932, the United States Public Health Service began a study of the effects of untreated syphilis on black men in Macon County, Alabama. Participants' informed consent was not collected. The study initially involved 600 black men, 399 with syphilis, 201 who did not have the disease. Researchers told the men they were being treated for bad blood, a local term used to describe several ailments, including syphilis, anemia, and fatigue. In exchange for taking part in the study, the men received free medical exams, free meals, and burial insurance. 4 decades later, on July 25, 1972, Associated Press reporter Gene Heller broke news about the study, prompting the U.S. Department of Health, Education, and Welfare to appoint an ad hoc panel to investigate. In October 1972, the panel advised stopping the study, and a month later, the study was ended. The panel concluded in their final report that the previous research on African Americans with syphilis was ethically unjustified. At the study's conclusion, only 74 of the original 600 men were still alive. 40 of their wives had been infected, and 19 of their children were born with congenital syphilis. The advisory panel's investigation led to compensation for the victims of the research and new protocols for the ethical treatment of human subjects of research. Voluntary informed consent for research subjects became the new standard and an explicit requirement for government-funded research. In 1997, President Clinton issued a formal presidential apology for the Tuskegee syphilis study. During its investigation, the panel collected a broad variety of historical documents and other papers. In 1973, a copy of the panel's working papers was deposited in the National Library of Medicine, NLM, located on the campus of the National Institutes of Health in Bethesda, Maryland. Through this research and related public education made possible by the unique collection held by the NLM, as well as the National Archives, we acknowledge the participants in the Tuskegee study and the injustices they and their families suffered. We also acknowledge the work of the Tuskegee Syphilis Study Ad Hoc Advisory Panel to address the unethical actions of the study, which ushered in new protections for the rights of patients and which continue to evolve with new advances in science and medicine. The NLM collects and preserves collections such as that of the Tuskegee Study Ad Hoc Advisory Panel to improve transparency in research and to ensure that lessons of the past inform the present and future of biomedical research, healthcare, public health, and healthy
broadly,
being.
Because we need broad backing for this. There's a lot that has to come together. So this is a wish. It's a very concrete wish that we invent this technology. If you gave me only one wish for the next 50 years, I can pick who's president, I can pick a vaccine, which is something I love, or I could pick that this thing that's half the cost with no CO2 gets invented. This is the wish I would pick. This is the one with the greatest impact. If we don't get this wish, the division between the people who think short-term and long-term will be terrible, between the U.S. and China, between poor countries and rich, and most of all, the lives of those 2 billion will be far worse. So what do we have to do? What am I appealing to you to step forward and drive? We need to go for more research funding. You know, when countries get together at places like Copenhagen, they shouldn't just discuss the CO2, they should discuss this innovation agenda, and you'd be stunned at the ridiculously low levels of spending on these innovative approaches. We do need the market incentives, CO2 tax, cap and trade, something that gets that price signal out there. We need to get the message out. We need to have this dialogue be a more rational, more understandable dialogue including the steps that the government takes. This is an important wish, but it is one I think we can achieve. I'm going to talk today about energy and climate. And that might seem a bit surprising because my full-time work at the Foundation is mostly about vaccines and seeds, about the things that we need to invent and deliver to help the poorest 2 billion live better lives.
And they're using chemical warfare against all of us.
Mimi naitwa Jean-Jacques na miaka 25 na nina watoto wawili. Sida inakuwa mwaka mzima wa pili huyu. Hapa niko nanisikia masikio kuziba, vertige, puisque jana nilitapika usiku. Kama tutapata ede, ndio tupiganishe madawa, juu madawa iko shere. Anaweza kusurvive tena hata 10 eko. Basi kuona sasa udhaifu wa maisha ndani ya jamaa, ndio hivi tunachelewa. Ikaenda ere kama ingewezekana kusaidia sana banatilia hata santri hapo wala nisi. Tunaweza kuwa makwanza mapiblisite na kuditapa na kuonesha watu mimi nilikuwa hivi, niko hivi, niko mgonjwa, asida, nilivumilia, napata madawa, nini. Mwe mengine mnaweza mkuya hapa, mtakuwa sana bia huyu. Guvernema ipasha kuwa ya kwanza kutoa msaada kwetu, lakini haitutole.
The idea of inexpensive tools to protect you from getting HIV is something we've always believed in, put a lot of money into. Thanks to the generosity of the U.S. and others, HIV is no longer a death sentence.
This footage is 100 years old. It shows part of the military exercises that took place off the east coast of the United States between 1921 and 1923. The Martin MB-2 airplane is emitting a trail of chemical smoke that rains down to the surface of the ocean, forming a dense smoke curtain hundreds of feet tall. The smoke is created from a highly toxic chemical called titanium tetrachloride. It's a colorless liquid that reacts with air moisture to form the smoke you see here, which consists of hydrated titanium acid and hydrogen chloride. It is dangerous to work with, an irritant to respiratory systems. And can corrode metal. It's not hard to imagine how this process of delivering huge chemical payloads by airplanes at altitude would be important to later developments in geoengineering and cloud seeding. If they were doing this 100 years ago, imagine what they can do now.
Shadows on the clouds.
Look to the heavens, lines in the sky that captivate conspiracy theorists. Chemtrails, followers convinced something evil and secret is going on.
See and look at It's got that pattern.
They believe the government or some shadow organization deliberately sprays chemicals to control our minds or to alter the weather. First, Chris Zadnick of Denver. He's a believer. So I could see a line in the sky?
Yes,
right
two
up
of
here
them,
right
yes.
now. So what do you think is going on up there right now?
They do tend to put them in front of the sun, which makes sense if they're trying to block sunlight.
What would you say is your strongest piece of evidence proving that chemtrails are real?
I think, I honestly, it might seem a little bit crazy that I literally have almost 400 videos.
1, 2, 3. X means death.
What do you think is going on up there?
Well, what they say is that this is sort of a desperate measure to counteract global warming.
Zadnick is quick to say he doesn't trust the government. Can you blame the guy? After all, our government doesn't really have the greatest track record when it comes to telling the truth. Agent Orange, the Tuskegee syphilis study, the human plutonium injection experiments. I can go on and on. That's the government. But what about science? Way back, this is a tight fit. Okay, pilots and scientists are uncomfortable talking about chemtrails. What is that white line in the sky behind a plane?
Well, the white line behind a jet is a natural process that goes on with the relationship between the aerodynamics of the aircraft and the atmosphere.
They won't even say that word. Scientifically, they're called condensation trails. Contrails for short.
So what you're really doing is you're sort of artificially generating a cloud.
It's like a long white cloud. That's essentially what it is.
That's right.
As jet fuel burns, it produces mostly water vapor. Picture my mouth like a jet engine. I know that sounds weird, but as I exhale, my breath contains a lot of water, so we'll see something like a cloud. Sounds simple, right?
You know that chemtrails actually exist?
Wait, what?
Yes, there are aircraft that were specifically built to spray chemicals, and the pilots even get paid per spraying application. Don't believe it? Then look what we have here. It's the all-famous AT-AO2 air tractor built in the USA and comes, if ordered, with a chemical spraying applicator fitted at the trailing edge of its wing and then flies at very low levels over crop fields to kill pesticides. It sprays chemicals from the trailing edge of the wing. There you have your chemtrails, which are on our flat Earth.
It's May 13th, 2019, and Alva and Alberta Piliad settle into their courtroom seats to hear the jury's verdict. They're nervous, and so is the lawyer representing them, Brent Wisner. They're nervous because they're suing Monsanto, which has now been bought out by the German chemical company Bayer, on the grounds that the company's weed killer Roundup caused them to develop a type of cancer called non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. It's the last day of their case, and the lead juror stands up to read the verdict. The room falls deathly silent, and Alva and Alberta hold hands. Finally, after a short preamble, the juror exclaims that Monsanto must pay $2 billion in damages to the Piliad family. The case is closed, and the Piliads visibly relax with joy. $2 billion is a large chunk of money. So what exactly has Monsanto done to receive such a massive verdict? In the next couple of minutes, we're going to talk about Monsanto. How they operate, how they pollute, why they've led to this graph, and what this man can offer as a solution. In Vietnam, clouds of toxic gas scour the countryside. It's 1971 and people are dying. The US is at the end of a violent chemical campaign. Since 1965, US troops sought to rob Vietnamese forces of food and foliage with the indiscriminate spraying of 123 million gallons of the herbicide Agent Orange. 4.8 million Vietnamese people were directly affected. And to this day, as the toxic chemical still lies angry in the landscape, many more are born with birth defects and health issues. And one of the primary companies supplying that gruesome chemical compound was none other than Monsanto. Up until the late 90s, Monsanto was a chemical company that grew to power by supplying deadly toxic concoctions to the US military during their imperialist endeavors. From Agent Orange to DDT, Monsanto brewed up these mixtures primarily for war. But when peace rolled around, Monsanto, like any tricky salesman, quickly found a new market for its chemicals: agriculture. By transforming their weapons of war into herbicides and pesticides, Monsanto introduced a militaristic mentality to farming by waging war instead on the soil, insects, and weeds. For years, Monsanto's #1 tool was glyphosate, but you probably know it by a more familiar name. Quite literally, Monsanto characterizes their customers as cowboys with Roundup as their pistol of choice.
With the all-new no-pump one-touch wand, it kills weeds dead and keeps weeds gone. Roundup, extended control.
But Monsanto's Roundup kills more than just weeds. It kills the soil by damaging the presence of certain beneficial microbacteria, which decreases soil fertility in the long run. It kills beneficial plants like milkweed, which is the primary nesting foliage for monarch butterflies. It's led to superweeds. Its production created a number of toxic mines and factories that continue to pollute surrounding towns and watersheds. And above all else, it kills people. Glyphosate has been deemed a probable carcinogen by the World Health Organization, with one analysis asserting that long-term exposure to Roundup's glyphosate increases your chance of contracting non-Hodgkin's lymphoma by 41%, which is exactly what Alva and Alberta Piliad were diagnosed with, and why the jury ordered Monsanto to pay $2 billion in damages to the Piliads. And since Bayer bought Monsanto in 2018, it's been sued by over 125,000 people for damages caused by Roundup. 125,000 cases. 125,000 people harmed by just a single chemical Monsanto touted for decades. As of June 2020, however, Bayer has had to come to terms with Monsanto's past. It settled over 100,000 of those lawsuits with a payout of $10 billion. A massive payout for sure, and one that gives hope for a stronger reckoning with the polluting history of Monsanto. But with that payout came an exception. Bayer is still allowed to sell Roundup without having to change a thing. And despite the overwhelming evidence to the contrary, the president of Bayer still says that glyphosate is safe to use.
Glyphosate has been and continues to be a product that is safe for its intended use, and very importantly, it is not carcinogenic.
He said that right after his company settled over 100,000 lawsuits saying the exact opposite. Indeed, that seems to be the company line. Roundup is and will continue to be safe to use. But clearly, it's not. Bayer Monsanto doesn't just offer weapons to kill weeds, however. It also supplies farmers with another insidious form of militaristic farming: pesticides. And out of the thousands of pesticides available, Bayer and Monsanto's best sellers are neonicotinoids, a group of chemicals derived from nicotine that attacks the nerve cells of insects and essentially overstimulates them until they die. In the US alone, it's estimated that neonics pervade over 150 million acres of farmland, with 90% of corn and 50% of soybean seed coated in neonicotinoids. This extensive use of insecticides has had dire ramifications. Many studies point to neonicotinoids as one of the main drivers of colony collapse disorder in honeybees, which has decimated pollinating honeybee populations in the last 2 decades. And because neonics are water-soluble, they seep into our crops and our waterways, affecting biodiversity in every direction of the food web. The consequences of neonics like clethanidin and fipronil look like the loss of flight for house sparrows, decreased immune response in Japanese quail, and impaired swimming abilities in fathead minnows, just to name a few. In short, Rachel Carson's Silent Spring is happening once again. But of course, it will be hard to pull Bayer away from this lucrative business. In 2018, the global neonic market generated $4.42 billion in revenue. The solution then must run counter to an obsession with scorching the land with pesticides. But before we can talk about solutions, we must first understand how Monsanto and Bayer gained control of the agricultural industry through seeds. It was a windy day in Canada when Percy Schmeiser went to answer his front door. He grabbed the handle, cracked the door, and immediately was served a lawsuit from Monsanto. To his knowledge, he hadn't done anything wrong, but it soon turned out that the canola seeds that had blown into his field a while back were Monsanto's property. Because, after all, Monsanto was patenting their herbicide-resistant GMO seeds and then restricting their use. And one of the rules Monsanto constructed was that farmers were not allowed to reuse Monsanto's seed, which, it turned out, is what Percy Schmeiser accidentally did. Farmers were, and still are, required to buy new seed from Monsanto every single year. This is just a small taste of the Monsanto-Bayer seed empire. 60% of the global seed market is owned by just 4 companies, with Bayer controlling 31% as of 2017. These companies achieved this monopoly by buying up smaller seed sellers and then patenting GMO seeds so that their Roundup-resistant corn variety couldn't be traded or replanted without legal repercussions. This also means that once you've started to use Monsanto's seeds and chemicals, you're stuck in a deadly spiral, which is exactly what's happening to farmers in rural India. There, Monsanto's BT cotton seed is king. 90 to 95% of cotton comes from the BT GMO seed. When it was commercialized in 2002, the seed promised a decrease in pesticide use while still maintaining pest control and higher yields. This was made possible because the seed was engineered with elements of pesticides within the plants. The idea being that you wouldn't need to spray as much because the plant would just kill the insects instead. But since 2002, it's become very clear that that dream is just, well, a dream. The GMO BT cotton has actually increased pesticide use because pests like bollworms grew resistant to them, and other previously non-target species like whitefly and the mealbug have emerged as new pests. On top of that, yields have declined as acreage of BT cotton has increased. In fact, according to Dr. Vandana Shiva in 2017, 31 countries were ranked above India in terms of cotton yield, and of these, only 10 of them grew genetically modified cotton. Adding insult to injury are price increases, which brings us to this graph. With the rise of Monsanto's BT cottonseed comes the rise of not only seed price, but also labor, insecticide, and fertilizer cost. In short, over the course of a decade, Monsanto created a predatory seed empire that drove up costs for Indian farmers, yet delivered very little in terms of yield or quality. Indian farmers are now stuck between a rock and a hard place. They can either attempt a hard transition away from the system or continue down its destructive path. Vandana Shiva and many other farmers and activists, however, are showing us hope, showing the world that Monsanto's and now Bayer's seed and chemical paradigm doesn't have to be the only way. This man, Ron Finley, is one of those activist gardeners that's rebelling against our industrialized and militarized food system. He's a lighthouse on the stormy seas of chemical produce. Finley, known as the guerrilla or gangster gardener, has been working to dismantle the system of food apartheid in South Central Los Angeles for over a decade. He began in part because I
got tired of driving 45 minutes round trip to get an apple that wasn't impregnated with pesticides.
And ever since, he's been involving his surrounding community in a gardening and food system focused not on control, efficiency, and attack, but on care, abundance, and biodiversity. Finley uses what's available, repurposing an abandoned pool and leftover buckets to produce a food oasis free of pesticides and corporate-controlled seeds. This new paradigm of smaller, more intimate food systems that produce food that not only nourishes the body, but also tastes good, is what we should be growing towards, not Bayer's monopoly over our food. But Ron Finley is just the tip of the iceberg. There are thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of small farmers putting in similar work to craft a food system based around thriving and care. We just have to go outside, find them, and lend our support.
It's a honeydew, kiwi, cucumber type of day. Now, here's the deal. Here's why you don't eat anything without seeds in them. Every single time you eat any type of food, it communicates to your body, right? It's talking to you. It's telling you something, which is why when you eat things in bags, you're probably eating behavior modifiers because it's talking to you, modifying your behavior. So you think you're feeling a type of way and then you eat something and you feel entirely different because the communication from the food that you're eating is telling you something. Now, when you eat food without any seeds in them, that was made in a lab, right? What is it telling you? You ever think about that? What is it telling you? Honeydew, kiwi, cucumbers, all seeds. Let's go.
Please look at these labels.
Watch out for this. Many people don't know that the numbers you get on fruits and vegetables actually mean something.
All organic produce starts with the number 9, and normally it's a 5-digit number. That's what you should buy. If the number starts with a 4 and it's like a 4-digit number, that is GMO. You should not buy that. Y'all have to stop being cheap with y'all food. And if it starts with a 3 and it's a 4-digit number, it's being sprayed with pesticide or chemicals. Please stay away from these commercial companies. They fill their foods up with chemicals and they are able to buy organic labels and stick it on their product. Please share this video with anyone you love.
TheraPEM.com, but the truth is, your health is at risk. The HMPV virus spreads rapidly through toxic fog, posing a significant threat to those with unprepared immune systems. Don't wait until it's too late. Watch the following video to discover how you can protect yourself and your loved ones.
A virus HMPV will spread in the world in 2025. In Simpsons, people wake up with scratchy throats, feel hot, and can't stop coughing. But soon everyone realizes this is much worse than a regular flu. The town changes quickly. The hospital gets so full that Dr. Hibbert has to see sick people in the parking lot. Empty streets that look like a ghost town. All schools close and parents can't go to work. People have to stay outside because the sickness spreads faster inside. Things get harder in Springfield. The stores run out of medicine. Food becomes hard to find. People wait in long lines for doctor visits. Everyone has to eat outside. Families share their food and supplies. The best part is how people help each other. Neighbors check on each other. Everyone shares what they have. Even mean Mr. Burns helps a little. The whole town works together to survive. What do you think of this prediction of virus HMPV?
It's a very important question to get right because it was absolutely key for me. When our foundation first started up, it was focused on reproductive health. That was the main thing we did because I thought, you know, population growth in poor countries is the biggest problem they face. You've got to help mothers who want to limit family size have the tools and education to do that. Well, then I came across articles that showed that the key thing you can do to reduce population growth is actually improve health.
This is a dried parasitic insect that you eat every day. Well, how is that possible? Well, watch closely. If I crush a small pile of these insects, scoop them up, and pour them into a vial of warm water, the water turns a deep red. This is used as a red dye under the names cochineal extract, natural red 4, E120, and carmine color. Carmine color is listed in the ingredients of this candy. So this candy gets its color from crushed up parasitic insects. Guess which of these products have parasitic insects in them? They all do.
I am never eating chicken again. You know what? This might actually make me go vegetarian. I cannot believe what just happened. So these are from a very respectable joint. 10 out of 10 chicken wings. Not usually what I go for because the bone and the gristle and the skin, I don't actually eat that much meat. But when in Rome, okay? I'm in Minneapolis. This is pus. Because this whole thing had an abscess. And so when I went to go bite in it, pus shot out from the meat. There's like a cavity left behind where all the infection and the abscess was. So that means that this chicken, let's see, I had a horrific infection at its joint, and all the chickens either look so sickly that it passed multiple levels of quality control and inspection to get to me, or the birds are just like so artificially plumped that they can't even tell. There's a giant, horrifically painful, debilitating abscess at the joint here, and then these chicken wings get sold to a bar in Minnesota and breaded and prepared. And I consumed at least this part of the meat that is infected and disgusting. Here's a close-up of cooked pus. This is what shot out of the side. I mean, multiple tablespoons of this leaked out onto the plate. Wash that down the sink, but here's what remained when I threw it away. It's so disgusting.
This is just a quick PSA. I'm in the Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania area. I ate one of these last Friday, spent the entire night vomiting, and something else was in the ER the next morning. Severe food poisoning. Happened about 4 hours after I consumed one of these from Walmart. So, yeah, I'm not trying to shame Walmart. I'm not sure. I don't think they're made on Walmart property, are they? I'm not sure.
I mean, it's a company that's owned by Walmart.
So, yeah, just beware if you want to eat these. Severe food poisoning.
So I just left Target. I'm doing 75 hard right now. I've been drinking a gallon of water a day. And today at work, I went to go open a gallon, and there were maggots all under the seal. And there were maggots all under the seal. And I was like, oh, okay, maybe it's just like a bad bottle. Like, I'll bring it back to Target. But when I went home and drank the other ones I had already drank, they all had maggots. And like, I've been feeling sick since Saturday. And now I'm like, what if it's because of this? So now I have to go to the hospital because Target sold me water with maggots.
I got it.
I got these water jugs on Thursday.
Okay.
I drink a gallon of water a day. I always buy them from here. I opened one up at work today. There were literally like maggot eggs all under like the seal cart and like little moving ones. And I went home and I checked all the other ones and they all have them. And I've been drinking maggots for 4 days. And since Saturday, like I'm throwing up and stuff. Like I'm gonna go to the hospital now.
Oh my god.
I don't really know what to do.
Give me one sec, right?
Yeah, I called earlier. She said just to bring them in, but I'm really grossed out.
Yeah, no, okay, just give me 1 second, right? I'm so sorry for that.
All of that stuff. And she's like, I shop here all the time. So it's just like.
Your return. Like I said, call them, explain to them exactly what you know, like you told me this morning, you opened them, you drank them.
And it was just like, there was one part of me that like in my mind I was like, I really hope it's just this one.
Just the one bottle.
But then it was all of them. It's just like, that shit made me itch.
Yeah,
like,
definitely explain to them what happened and then they'll make the decision from there at store level, and then we take those, return them to the vendor. They're gonna deal with the vendor from this end. But like I said, explain to them and then see where they go from there.
Thank you.
So sorry about
Have
that.
a good day.
You too.
This is so gross.
RFK Jr. is now moving forward with one of his top priorities as the Secretary of Health and Human Services, pushing to change CDC guidance to no longer recommend adding fluoride to public drinking water.
And the era of fluoridated toothpastes and mouthwashes, it makes no sense to have fluoride in our water.
On Monday, Utah becoming the first state in the country to ban fluoride from its drinking water systems, and more could soon follow suit. About 2/3 of the American public drink water with fluoride in it. It was added to drinking water in the 1900s to help prevent tooth decay.
And we have seen a 25% reduction in terms of tooth decay by putting fluoride in the water. And it is a low-cost opportunity to really eliminate health disparities for individuals who may not be able to get to the dentist.
But critics like RFK Jr. point to a report from the National Toxicology Program last year that found some evidence of lower IQ in children who had higher levels of fluoride exposure. But none of the children tested were in the U.S., and their exposure was twice the CDC's recommended limit for U.S. drinking water. The report also said more research is needed to see if those small doses recommended in the U.S. can cause harm, and that no cause and effect was found between fluoride exposure and lower IQ.
A juicy, sizzling steak made by computer. While obtaining regular meat is a process that's been taking place for millennia, cow, butcher, beef, Redefined Meat, a meat alternative startup out of Israel, makes their product using a highly technical process. The mix of soy and pea protein, chickpeas, beetroot, nutritional yeast, and coconut fat is formed into steak-like shapes using a 3D printer.
Our goal is to become the largest meat company in the world just by harnessing technology instead of animals.
Meat substitutes are not new, but unlike the soy-based crumbles that mimic ground beef, Redefined Meat's product is designed to act, taste, and cut like flank steak.
This is the holy grail of alternative meat.
But the most important part, how does it taste? This diner was happy.
The texture feels right. Even the smell smells like the real thing. Really authentic for meat.
I feel like it's already starting to be a slight smell.
Yeah, there is a heavy smell.
And that sounds paradoxical. You think, okay, better health means more kids, not less kids. Well, in fact, what parents are doing is they're trying to have 2 kids survive to adulthood to take care of them. And so the more disease burden there is, the more kids they have have that high probability. So there's a perfect correlation that as you improve health, within a half generation, the population growth rate goes down. In fact, Hans Rosling here at this conference in 2 of my favorite speeches actually showed that unbelievable correlation that population growth has gone down. Today, where is there high population growth? It's in the places with the worst health conditions, northern Nigeria, northern India. And so the 2 problems go exactly hand in hand. If we improve health rapidly, we will get the peak population to be as much as 1 billion below the current expected peak. That is about 8.3 billion versus 9.3.
Hey Arizona, I opened that can and I'm an idiot. I did not record it and there was something really disgusting in there. So here's a new one. Oh God, this is what I swallowed. What is that? I'm still sick to my stomach. Oh, gross. Arizona, dude. Swear to God, it's disgusting.
COVID-19 is a collection of symptoms that was created from man-made things they called a bat virus, and it wasn't. The Chinese researchers that were overseeing the Wuhan patients in hospitals in China in the fall of 2019, who were the first in Wuhan to report symptoms of a weird pneumonia, the Chinese government sent in scientists to analyze the blood of every one of those patients in those hospitals. They wanted to know what was their body fighting. When they ran the DNA analysis on all the antibodies and all the patients in Wuhan, the Chinese researchers published a research study. They published that it's not bats that are the source of this coronavirus pneumonia. It's actually venom from the king cobra snake and venom from another snake called the Chinese crate snake. The source of COVID-19 symptoms are 2 snakes' venoms. For the last 100 years, Big Pharma have been utilizing and manufacturing venom proteins from snakes, scorpions, starfish, cone snails, wasps, spiders. Drugs and vaccines use these venoms as their drugs. You know, the NIH published a document that states in the title and in the first paragraph that the spike proteins of COVID are identical to snake venom neurotoxins. If you get censored for saying this, the NIH already put it on the internet.
I have people, honestly, that love God, they're Christians, and back during COVID, I was a little bit critical, and I was warning people about Bill Gates going back into 2021, and people shared, Mondo, I don't understand why you would be critical. He's him and his wife, they're so loving. They're helping the world. They're in Africa. They're helping with vaccines. And you're like, they're also one of the biggest providers of abortion in all of that. So Bill Gates, am I misunderstanding him? Is he really just a wonderful, loving guy? I mean, in your deep dive, what'd you find out?
Yeah, no, that's, and you're going to see with every one of these global elites, they got not millions, but billions of dollars. And they literally pay the media off to create a persona of them that dupes people, to get them to think that they're a nice guy when they're not. It's a smokescreen. And in the case of Bill Gates, the smokescreen that he still to this day right now is paying for by the media, not just in America, but around the world, is he's just kind of like he's kind of a techie, nerdy guy.
Yeah.
But he's a tech genius. And he's demonstrated that through Microsoft.
Just loves people.
And he's such a wonderful guy, Mondo, that he is now retired from that. And he's using his billions and billions of dollars to help the planet. Him and his ex-wife.
That's creepy.
Why did she become the ex-wife? We'll get to that in a second. But this guy is far from that. And something I learned in biblical counseling in seminary, and it was the phrase that Dr. Couch used to say all the time, if you want to know the man, know the history. And so I said, okay, I want to know about Bill Gates. So I dug into his history beyond the smokescreen.
Surfacey, smokescreen.
Who is this guy? What really drives him? And the two things that came out was, believe it or not, every decision he makes, still to this day, even during the pandemic, it's all about making money and murdering people. And the murder aspect came in when you understand his background, that his dad, as you mentioned the abortion issue, his dad was head of Planned Parenthood. It's on tape. Bill admits it. And Planned Parenthood is one of the biggest depopulation techniques to rid the planet of what they say is too many people. And then so we expose that that's not true in itself. I mean, even if it was true, you don't go murder people. And plus, if these guys were true altruists about being believers that were overpopulated, all right, let's start with your family. But no, it's always somebody else's family, isn't it?
Isn't it? Yeah.
So, but it's a lie. And we demonstrate depopulation is a lie. And we're actually in a population collapse is the trajectory that we're headed on the actual research that's out there. But they use that as an excuse to get rid of people. And so he was brainwashed with that or bought into it or whatever, however you want to say it. But he was brought up in that environment with Planned Parenthood that there's too many people and we need to start in the womb and kill them. He's just gone outside the womb. With all his ventures, every single one of them, he's going to make money and he's going to murder people. So there is that background with Bill Gates, and that's what he's been up to when he left Microsoft and he started the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. The other thing we know he's about making money, and the way he makes money is he creates monopolies. And that's not hyperbole. This is why he was taken to task by the U.S. government back in the day.
Yeah,
because that's how he made his money. He made monopolies off of Microsoft.
Yep, he got
and that
broken
was
up.
the only software that you could use on any computer.
Search engines, all of it. Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
And so he got in trouble for that, but he still got away with it, and he's still doing it. But that's his modus operandi. He finds an industry that he can invest his money in, not for philanthropic reasons. Oh, no. It's so he can create a monopoly off of it, and then at the same time, it will also help him kill people. And so we demonstrate this. Let me get in his background first. Bill Gates is not some nice guy. Bill Gates, not only with the Planned Parenthood, I want to kill off people. That's bad enough as it is. But there's many secular accounts of him being basically a sexual pervert, including back in the Microsoft days. And this is in print. It's not a
that's
conspiracy
why his
theory.
wife left him.
And then, of course, now we all know, but nobody seems to talk about it much because, again, he pays the media off. Even if it comes out, he quickly pays it to reverse it and repaint his image again. And with his ties with Jeffrey Epstein, long-term ties. In fact, we even have an interview on tape. His ex-wife now, Melinda, admitted that was part of the reason why she divorced him. She said she knew about it for a while. She wanted to meet him. She said that was the worst thing I ever did. She said
because she met Epstein.
She met him, and he was the evilest person ever. And she said anyway. So Bill Gates is not this innocent guy. But even with her, there was a strange, and this is in print and on tape. They had a weird marriage period because Melinda agreed. Bill had an agreement with her that once a year he got to go shack up a weekend with his ex-girlfriend. And apparently she agreed to it. I'm going, what marriage would do that? So this guy is frankly a pervert. sexually immoral. He wants to kill people. That's the real Bill Gates.
Greedy, yeah.
Right? So let's go back and apply, know the history, know the man. He wants to create a monopoly to make money, and he wants to murder people. All right, let's go into the food industry. Is Bill Gates a food expert? Is he a nutritionist? Have you seen pictures of him? He better change his diet.
Right.
Right? But so why is he so concerned? Because he's going to create a monopoly, and at the same time, it's going to murder people. Bill Gates is buying up farmland that is not to help farmers, it's to restrict farming. And he wants to restrict farming of crops and livestock, the two things we eat, because he's come out with his monopoly called fake meat.
Fake meat, yeah.
Right? So he's creating a monopoly. So I'm going to decrease.
And he gets the law. He gets the government to go along with all the eco stuff, and then he gets subsidized.
Right, because he buys out the governments. And this is around the world, not just the United States. And so he gets them under the lie of climate change to go along. That becomes the excuse.
Yep.
So we have to get rid of the old paradigm so that we can create a new paradigm. Well, who owns the new paradigm? Who owns the new food supply? Bill Gates. So what's he going to do? He's going to force people to go to his new monopoly called fake meat, right? And not just fake meat. He's also big into the seed industry.
Yeah.
And I didn't know this until I knew about this, but I didn't know he was behind it until I did the deep dive. The Svalbard Seed Project. Bill Gates funded that. And that's the quote, Noah's Ark of seeds that is storing all the seeds. Why? Because they're genetically modifying the seeds. And one of the things they're doing with the seeds is called the terminator gene, where the seed, that's why husbandry and farming that are biblical, by the way, are the two industries that self-replicate.
Yeah.
Right? And that you could be self-sufficient. You raise animals, livestock. Well, don't kill them all. You save some for the next future livestock. You raise crops. What do seeds do? Save back some to produce because seeds produce eventually more seeds.
Yeah, for the next
It's
season.
perfect, God's design. So they figured out a way to genetically modify animals and genetically modify seeds. It's called the terminator gene, to where the seed doesn't produce another seed. It's one and done.
You have to go back to
So
them.
bingo, you got it?
Yep.
So he's behind the scenes doing all this stuff. So what he's doing is he's getting rid of the traditional food supply methodologies. He's coming up with his new ones. And guess who owns the patents? He does.
Yep. And under the claim that they're 10 times more productive, and look at this, we're solving. No, you're controlling.
You're controlling.
the future.
Why? Because he's going to make bank. Because this is on global. You're controlling the global food supply. But what's his other motive? Murder people. So is his fake meat and genetically modified meat and genetically modified seeds, are they good for you? No. And we demonstrate that even just the meat is made from cancerous tumor cells. That's not a joke, Mondo. That's in print. Even secular people are bringing it out. I'm sorry. If you replicate so-called meat with cancer in it, I'm not going to eat that.
I'm not going to eat that.
But see, he's going to force you into eating it.
Yeah.
He's even taken over the water supply so that he can now give you his new Bill Gates, and I'm not making this, not feces water. That's the nicest way I can say it. He's taken human waste, and he's got this invention that he's backed that creates water out of human waste. You going to drink that? I ain't going to drink that.
No.
But that's what he's doing. But what does it do? It's his two motives for everything he does: make money, murder people.
Well, and it goes along with, again, the Antichrist kingdom, in that we've seen, and you've documented it with Klaus Schwab and others, where they say, well, you get this amount of real meat per year, maybe, a couple steaks a month, maybe if you're lucky, because the cows are producing, methane, and blah, blah, blah. And so it's interesting how it all comes together. I want to switch for a moment because I don't want to leave him out in the last few minutes, is George Soros. Most people don't know much about him because he kind of stays a little bit in the shadows. The average person wouldn't really know that. I've heard of the guy. Bill Gates is different. But you spend some time on George Soros as being one of these elites that is contributing to the Antichrist kingdom.
Yeah, George Soros, you should know about him because he right now he is responsible for getting his fingers involved in manipulating 120 plus countries. This guy, and who is he? He's not an elected official, but that's what he's doing with his money and power. And he did the same thing Bill Gates did. After he made his billions, he set up a shell company to do the dirty, evil deeds. That's the smokescreen. Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation is a smokescreen for Bill Gates to make money and murder people. George Soros, he makes money and controls people, is his two motives. And he set it up under the open Society Foundation. Well, that's all it is. And all he does is go and manipulate countries, governments, media, educational systems, and it's all designed to make money. And one of his modus operandi is he goes in and purposely causes chaos in countries. Why? Because it has an effect on certain markets, and so it drives the market down. And then when it's way down, because he caused it to go down with his paid riots and paid agendas and paid this, then he jumps in, buys it, and then he halts it. It goes back up. He sells it off. He makes bank. And this is the carbon copy. And not only that, he also is a huge investor in things that not just causing suffering in the market, causing suffering in people. He's a huge supporter of drugs and not just marijuana. He is a huge supporter to try to get legalized. He's paying off people to do this with, I'm not joking, even heroin and cocaine. He wants all that legalized. You know why? Because he's invested in people that are going to start to manufacture that, and he's going to make bank. And we're not talking millions, we're talking billions of dollars. And then you're like, well, why would he be so callous that he would, who cares how much suffering I cause as long as I'm okay and I get money? You go back to his history. George Soros, his real name is George Schwartz. He's a Jew. And he turned on his own people. And this is on tape, Mondo. We got this on. It was an archive. It's like, man, I think this is in the 70s. When was this? This is crazy. And but he admitted that he and his family in World War II escaped the Nazis as a Jewish family by lying about their identity. They claimed to be Christians to escape while their fellow brothers and sisters, Jewish people, were taken out.
Change your name.
And then bad enough, well, on top of that, he admitted that he, with his new identity, actually helped the Nazis as a teenager to confiscate the property of his fellow Jewish people. And he was actually asked, this is on tape, doesn't that bother you? Don't you feel any remorse for that? He said, no. He literally says, just look, no. And then he states, I'm here to make money. And see, and he admits that upbringing is what, quote, shaped his character. So you want to know what George Schwartz is really up to? Just as he turned on his own fellow Jewish people, he doesn't care about their suffering. He's here to make money. On the backs of suffering, deceit, manipulation, he doesn't care. And Mondo, once you get that, it explains everything he's up to, even still to this day.
And you know what's interesting is that he's in his mid-90s now. He's on death's door, but he's appointed his son.
Bingo.
And so that whole mentality, and I've read that his son is worse.
Not only is worse, we've got him on tape saying he's going to take it to a worse level.
Mm-hmm.
That you thought my dad was liberal and leftist and causing chaos in all these different countries to make money.
Yep.
You ain't seen nothing yet. That's his son, Alex.
Yeah, Alex.
And that's the point we're bringing. Like, whew, man, he's getting up there in age. I mean, we're going to put up this guy much longer.
Yeah.
Nope. Not so. They have a backup plan.